The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Monday night, hopefully everybody is having a great beginning of your week. All right, I'm back home. Look, it's my old background, and I'm not sitting because I'm not sick anymore. God, it's been quite I think it's 9 weeks, right? 3 weeks traveling in Europe, 3 weeks home, basically sick the entire time, and then 3 weeks traveling in Europe again. I'm back, like for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, should be here, should be good before Ocon. So we're good. We're going to have lots of shows, lots of content. Of course, you can sponsor a show, $1,000. You can determine the topic. You can sponsor what you want. So, yeah, there's Ryan. Ryan's going to sponsor a show here in the next few episodes. We're going to do a show that Ryan is sponsoring, or Ryan did a campaign to sponsor. He didn't pony up the money all by himself. But we will. We're going to get back on schedule. 4 shows a week, basically, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm sure there'll be some deviations. Next week is my birthday, so we'll probably not do a show on my birthday, and then there's a dinner. Anyway, it'll get complicated, but overall, we'll try to do 4 shows every week and get back on track, and we can get the Super Chat on track, and maybe we can get Catherine to show up and help with the Super Chat again. She hasn't been on for a while. But anyway, we are rolling. We're back on. There's Scott. All right. Right off the bat. Thank you, Scott. So yes, Scott is using the Super Chat to ask me a question. You can use the Super Chat to ask me a question or to support the show. Either way, feel free. It's available. It's a little feature at the bottom there. We have a goal every show of $600. We've been pretty much meeting it almost every time. So let's not break the streak. And sometimes we go way over it. So thank you for all of those who help make that possible. The best way for us to get there is for you to ask questions just ask a lot of questions. Those of you who can afford to do so at $20 or more gets us there faster. That is always great. Of course, those of you who just want to support the show, welcome to do so with the Super Chat. 3 topics today, basically. Replacement theory. So obviously the horrible terrorist attack in Buffalo, in New York, by what appears to be a racist white supremacist, and so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the theory that his manifesto claims animated him. We'll talk about that theory and its prevalence in the mainstream media, and in the alt and maybe not so alt right. We'll talk about NATO. In Ukraine, so just a Ukraine update, nothing much here that you haven't heard before, but I figured a lot's been going on the Ukraine front. We should catch up, and it is truly fascinating to watch the world and to see how the supporters of Putin, get themselves into these pretzels trying to justify what he's doing and to explain what he's doing. And the thing that upsets them more than anything is the potential perception of Putin as weak, or as a loser, like Trump, as another loser. And that was just for you, Scott. And finally, we will talk about some democratic misdirection. This will be in the context of inflation, and it'll be in the context of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos trying to be Elon Musk. Doing not a bad job, I'd say. Jeff Bezos going after Joe Biden on Twitter, of all places. Jeff, maybe he's upset that he's not the richest man in the world anymore, and that Elon Musk is having all the fun. But he went after Joe Biden and a bunch of others, economic analysis over the issue of inflation. It's good, and particularly his first tweet from May 13th is actually really good. So I thought I'd reel that to you, and we can discuss that. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. And yeah, we can also talk about Elon Musk's Twitter purchase being on hold now, and the implications of that, or what's going to happen with all of that. We'll see. I don't know that I have any particular insight with regard to that. But it's yeah, but it's good. All right. Thank you. So we got a bunch of super chat flowing in. I will have one of the supporters of the show has written a macro program that I haven't tried yet, but I will try it next show, that basically is going to pull out all the super chat questions and put them on a separate screen for me, so I don't have to do the copy paste thing and get distracted. That is going to be super cool. So I can't wait to try it out. Hopefully we'll try it out tomorrow. I just didn't have enough time today to get it set up and to get it rolling. But hopefully you can try that tomorrow, and that'll be fantastic. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, let's start with some good news, because everything else in the show is bad news. The Boston Celtics won this series with Milwaukee. So sorry, Milwaukee fans. Sorry, Miami fans, because we're going to roll over Miami as well. Boston might actually, win the championship this year. There is a real chance. This is a team that was mediocre, weak and mediocre in January, and yet they've turned it around completely. They have the potential. To be the best team. They have been the best team in basketball for a long time now. They have the potential now to win the championship. I'm excited. I am considering, if they get to the finals, I'm considering flying up to Boston to see a game. I've never seen a live championship game, so I'm really thinking about getting in the JetBlue flight. And all you bad losers, all you Boston haters. Anyway, I'm planning to fly up to Boston to catch a game. I'm assuming they're going to play the Golden State Warriors, which should be a great series, and it should be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. So that made my day yesterday. That was a lot of fun, watching that game. All right, let's see. What else do we have? I think we're all caught up. I've been putting out a lot of short videos out. Not the 1-minute ones, although we put out a few of those, so please promote those. That'd be great. But also 3, 5, 20-minute videos all over the place. So please watch those, share those, get them out there. Those are great ways to introduce people to the Yaron Brook Show who are not going to commit to the 2-hour show that we have that we run over here. So that would be great if you guys could share those. All right, don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to support the show in the super chat. Don't forget to ask questions. I see that Robert Naser, I think I've got this right, is keeping track of the amount of money coming in. So we have a good. I think Robert's good at counting, and doesn't look like we've got a lot of foreign currency yet. Just one foreign currency transaction so far. So hopefully that won't slow us down too much. Okay. How do we transition now? God. Well, I think you've all read about what happened in Buffalo over the weekend. Last I read, 10 people were killed. A number of people were still in the hospital. A man walked into a grocery store, basically, and went on a shooting spree and killed a bunch of people. Like many of the people who've done this before, El Paso, if you remember, I think that was a Walmart. Not a Walmart, a Home Depot, I think. In a synagogue in Pennsylvania, where a man went in and killed a bunch of Jews at the synagogue. They all published manifestos, and like at Church Christ in New Zealand, where I think the numbers were far bigger in terms of the number of deaths than anything in the United States has seen. Again, a manifesto was published, and all manifestos are basically inspired by the same basic idea. Remember, the world at the end of the day is shaped by ideas. And while for a very long time we believed that the terrorist threat that most of us should fear, that most of us should be concerned about, was the terrorist threat coming from the ideas of jihadism, from the idea of Islamism, that is still probably true. The Islamist terrorists are still looking out there and could strike any time. The fact is that the current threat of dying from a terrorist attack is much more likely to come right now from a new right, or wacky right, if I call the left wacky left. This is the wacky right, the white supremacist right, the replacement theory right. And I've talked before about replacement theory. I think I did a whole episode about Tucker Carlson directly referring to the replacement theory, supporting the replacement theory, expressing his support for it, and popularizing it, using the platform he has on Fox News to legitimize his theory and popularize it. The replacement theory was first coined as replacement by a French author. I think it was in 2011. And he was writing about the idea that Europeans, particularly France, Europeans were being replaced by people of dark skin, either Africans, black Africans, or Muslims, and that France the white people in France were being replaced by people of different ethnic, different genetic origin, different skin color. And as a consequence, French culture was going to be in decline, and everything, Western civilization was lost, and you know, the world was changing dramatically. Since then, many people on the right, here in the United States and internationally, have picked up on this idea. In the United States, the replacement is primarily happening by people from Latin America, so Mexicans, Hispanics, and so on, but also by blacks, and of course, let me just note that many of these theories are animated by the belief that behind this great replacement theory are Jews. Like every good conspiracy theories, you need the devil. And like any good conspiracy theory, the devil preferably is a Jew. That is why, if you remember back to the synagogue attack in Pennsylvania, he attacked the synagogue. He attacked the Jews, not because they were the ones doing the replacement, but because of the idea that they were the ones who were making the replacement possible. That it was all about the Jews financially supporting, financially conspiring, or politically conspiring to replace Christian whites with Hispanics who they, I guess, could control easier in their attempts to take over the world. So I always get upset about this idea that Jews are going to take over the world, and yet nobody told me about it. Maybe I need to get more involved in the Jewish thing to be in on the conspiracy. Or maybe I am in on it, but I'm just not telling you guys. That's also a possibility. I guess you have to consider. I mean, it really is sickening. But the idea is basically a racist idea that what defines America, what defines Europe, are not the ideas that made America and Europe great, not the founding principles of the founding fathers, not the Enlightenment ideas, the ideas of liberalism, the ideas of freedom, not the great art that helped define Western culture and Western civilization, not the science, not the scientific revolution, but primarily not the Enlightenment ideas. No, what defines Europe, what defines America, is the color of our skin. An idea, by the way, shared today by the left. So in this, the left, the wacky left and the wacky right, share an ideology. They all believe in the primacy of skin color. They all believe in the primacy of the gene. They all believe in the primacy of your genetic makeup. And on the right, on the wacky right, there is this notion that what makes America, what makes Europe is whiteness, and therefore having people come in of different color skin is a death warrant on the culture. It's a death warrant. Because they cannot be assimilated, because as one of our commentators in the chat does, as they always do, oh no, these people have low IQs. I bet you I can take a random Nigerian immigrant, dark skin, and I'm willing to bet a lot of money that any random Nigerian has a higher IQ than OARC Promo has. Yeah, sorry, I'm picking on OARC Promo. Sorry, it wasn't OARC Promo. Delete that. It was John Davis. That they have a higher IQ than John Davis. So let's not assimilate people. Let's not embrace our own culture, our own ideas, our own values. Let's not teach people what those are so that they can be assimilated and become part of what is America or what is Europe. Let's instead just keep our skin color, because that's all that matters. That's all that matters. I mean, this is some of the most horrific, racist nonsense, irrationality. And of course, they're all determinists. So they all think you are determined by your gene, or you are determined by your culture, but you certainly are determined. They reject free will. They reject the idea that you can shape your own character, that you can make your own choices, that you can pursue your own values. Right? People of different colored skin just are hopeless. People of different colored skin just have no potential of becoming part of this great nation. They have no potential of adopting the ideas of the founders. Take a Patrick Henry. No, I'm sorry, not Patrick Henry. Drop that. Right? So, the idea here is that what defines the culture is skin color. What defines a culture is the most lowest form of collectivism, the most tribal notion that one can imagine. I will get to all the questions, I promise. So, what do you do about this? Right? What do you do about this? John Davis says, nobody believes that. It's probably 50-50 between genes and culture. But that's my point. It's not 50-50. It's 25-25, 50, maybe. Maybe even less than that. And maybe it's 10-10, 80. Because what you, John, like most people, ignore is free will. What you ignore completely is the fact that we shape our own character, that we choose our own values, that we actually have free will. All you have is determined robots out there being determined by their culture. They happen to be born in Europe, so they have a good culture. They're good people. They are born in Africa, bad culture, bad people. Bad genes, bad people. Good genes, good people. Complete crap. Complete nonsense. Now, this idea that what defines civilization is skin color, what defines civilization is DNA, what defines civilization is an unimportant attribute of your genes. I mean, this attitude would be one thing if it was just on the fringe. It was just on the wacky left and the wacky right. But we've seen how this attitude from the wacky left is infiltrated and become somewhat mainstream within the left, although there is some resistance to it. And now we're seeing how these wacky ideas on the right about race are becoming mainstreamed by people like Tucker Carlson. And mainstreamed by many on the, I'd say, nationalist right, who don't have a view of America as a great nation because it's based on great ideas, don't have a view of America as a great nation because of its great founders and the great documents they left us and the great philosophy they embedded into the culture. But they have a view that America is a great country because we're white and Christian. We're part of a white and Christian people. And that's what makes us great. So, we are moving towards, as I've always said, a unity of left and right. Where left and right agree that skin color is everything, that genes are everything, that ethnic origin is everything. That we must, for the right, preserve America as a white nation. And in the left, suppress the white people because they're all guilty. So it's amazing to me that we have gone from the document that says that all men are created equal, that we have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to a world where rights don't matter. Rights have nothing to do with it. And all men are created equal? You got to be kidding me. Nobody's equal. Not in rights, not in before the law, not in any sense. God forbid immigrants have rights. God forbid people who cross the border have any rights. God forbid Americans who invite people into the country have rights. Americans have no rights if they can't invite whoever they want to come and work for them. They can't invite whoever they want to sell their house to. They can't invite anybody else, anyone they want to stay at their hotel. No. America has moved far, far away from the idea of individual rights, far, far away from the idea of equality of rights, equality before the law. And we've now embraced tribalism and the ideas of not of equality before the law, not of equality of rights, not of equality of liberties, but some kind of equality of outcome that cannot be achieved, or some kind of genetically determined hierarchy which cannot be questioned, depending on whether you're on your left or the right. But again, it all boils down to the same hopeless determinism that is a feature of both right and left. To challenge this, we need to return to the founding principles of this country. To challenge this, we need to embrace the idea of individual rights. Individual rights. Not determined by the color of your skin. Not granting you the permission to go kill 10 people because they happen to be black. Not giving you the permission to build a wall to prevent peaceful people from coming in because you don't like their color skin, culture, language. All men are created equal didn't say that it's only about one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. We either have rights or we don't have rights as human beings. Either rights are a universal concept or they're not. They're only for white people. I guess I shouldn't define myself as white, although these days I guess the left defines me as white. I'm not sure the right does. I'm not sure the right has ever accepted people born of Jewish descent as being from the right. The only way to fight is to fight the battle of ideas. The only way to fight the battle of ideas is to have principles. And to have principles, you need to be consistent. You need to have them well defined. And you need to be willing to fight for those principles, to stand up for those principles, to argue for those principles. And God, it's truly stunning how few people I've seen from the right, or let's say the non-left, come out against replacement theory, argue against it. There is no massive conspiracy by Jews to replace white people with dark-skinned people. But the fact is that there are more dark-skinned people or Asian and dark-skinned people in the world than there are white people. But good culture is not determined by genes. It's determined by the people who have the good ideas and have a good culture. Their willingness to fight for it. Their willingness to stand up for it. Their willingness to insist that people accept that culture. It means rejecting multiculturalism in all its forms, rejecting the idea that cultures are equal, and fighting for what is good. Fighting for what is right, fighting for what is just. But it's shocking to me that here we are in the 21st century and we're still dealing with just blatant, ugly racism. We should be so far beyond that. We should be so far better than that. But we're not. We're not. And we're not on both sides of the political spectrum. The world of sanity, is shrinking dramatically. The number of people who are actually individualists, who argue for individualism, argue from the perspective of individualism, is shrinking dramatically in both left and on right. The number of people arguing for not the supremacy of the white race, not the supremacy of the Christian religion, but the supremacy of Western civilization as a civilization arising out of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, shrinking. And without that fight, without fighting for rights, without fighting for civilization, without insisting on it, without standing one's ground on it, we are indeed lost. And I don't know. It's very depressing to have to fight this kind of battle. It's very depressing to have to talk about replacement theory, which should be, for anybody half civilized, just barbarism. We, in the Yaron Brook Show, advocate for treating people as individuals, not as faceless, I wouldn't say colorless, because color is all that matters, not as faceless, interchangeable cogs in a machine, cogs in a collective. Replacement theory relies on tribalism, it relies on collectivism, it relies on viewing people not as individuals. Its appeal is to the tribalist. Its appeal is to the collectivist. And the only way to fight that is to reject collectivism, reject tribalism, and embrace individualism, treating people as individuals. All right, I'm going to scan the super chats to see questions that relate to the topic. No. All right, I know there were some. God, no. Okay, I have never understood hatred of the Jews. It's incomprehensible. Well, I mean, it's not. If you understand envy, and that envy, unfortunately, is everywhere, and that I think that Christian morality and Christian ideology encourages envy, then the Jews have always been in a position to be envied. They have not been restricted by the bounds of Christianity. They have been, in a sense, free of those. They have been successful. They've worked hard and been successful, and they have been resented for that. And of course, one has to understand that generally hatred is almost always dependent on dehumanizing the other side. So if you're going to go slaughter a bunch of people, it's easier to dehumanize them, make them less than human. And it's easier to do that to people who look, talk, appear different than you are. And so Jews, having, particularly in the olden times, dress differently and speak differently and they are often perceived as the other. And as the other, they are, harassed and discriminated against and so on. So the other thing about Jews is they're successful. They tend to be smart. If you're going to have a conspiracy with people running things and getting stuff done, getting evil stuff done, then you need them to be semi-competent and you need them to be somewhat able. And so you need somebody to run the conspiracy theory, and they better be competent, and therefore, Jews fit all the criteria. They're the other, they're easy to hate because they're different. They're easy to hate because there's a bunch of mythology around them. They kill Jesus, they drink Christian baby's blood, they do all kinds of things. So a lot of mythology has been created around them, and that mythology survived because they're so different. And then they're smart, so they can pull it off, right? You're not going to have stupid people run the world because they can't pull it off. Jews can pull it off. And that still exists, even though today Jews in American society are so integrated. You couldn't tell a Jew in most places. You wouldn't know. And yet, they're still the other because they're different. They're different because people decided they're different. And the mythologies still exist and are still perpetuated. I did a show, I can't remember when, not that long ago, from Barry Weiss article about anti-Semitism on campus from the left, and how the left how the left demonizes Israel in anti-Semitic terms. They use all the old anti-Semitic notions in order to attack Israel. Okay, Alejandro asks, are Jews worried about replaced by Arabs in Israel? Well, I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean that are Jews worried that Arabs are going to kill them? Yeah, I would be. Jews are worried that the Arabs, that the Muslims that surround them are going to slaughter them. Wouldn't you be worried about that? Now, is their worry completely and unmistakably irrational? If they got nothing to fear and they're just being collectivistic, irrational emotionalists in fearing that the Arabs might attack them? Well, no, because there's plenty of evidence that the Arabs who live around Israel have tried over and over and over again and are still committed, at least many of them, to the complete and utter destruction of Israel and the killing of all the Jews there, or a significant number of them. Yes, that's fact. So are Jews worried about not being replaced, but by being killed, being slaughtered, being murdered by Arabs? Yes. Is there reason to believe that Mexicans are coming to the United States and are just going to slaughter everybody? No, most of them just want to get a job, work, make a living. There's no ideology in place among Latin American immigrants to the United States that suggests the killing of all Americans. There is an ideology among Arabs that suggests the killing of all Jews. So yes, Jews are worried, not about being replaced, but being killed. They should be. They have every reason to be. And if you're telling me you're worried about Europe because many of the Muslims that move there are Islamist jihadists who want to turn Europe into a theocracy, then I'd say, yeah, that's something to worry about. And we should think about how to prevent that. That's good. That's something we should all be worried about. But that's not replacement theory. Replacement theory is pure demographics. Has nothing to do with ideas. That's the whole point. It's the rejection of ideas. It's all about genes and skin color. All right. God, we got a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Let's see if we can pick up more on this topic. Okay, Super K Pill says, why do you think Jews are behind this conspiracy? I don't. I think you meant, why do you think people think Jews are behind this conspiracy? And how big a role does mental illness play among conspiracy theorists in general? I think it's too simple to excuse these things as mental illness. Now, by some definition of mental illness, a lot of the conspiracy theories are mentally ill, but think about QAnon. I mean, QAnon was believed by millions of Americans. Millions. QAnon is still believed by millions of Americans. Can we say that all those millions of Americans are, mentally ill? Now, those who choose to pick up guns and go slaughter people, should we just define them as mentally ill because they're doing something that's incomprehensible to us? No, these are people committed to their ideas. They believe that America is doomed unless they act. They consider themselves great patriots, fighting for a great cause. They have bad epistemology. They can't think. They're emotional beings. And yet, I don't know that I would define them as mentally ill. So I don't know. I think conspiracy theory is a cultural phenomena, a phenomena of a lack of ability to think, a lack of ability to reason, a lack of ability to identify fact from fantasy and fiction, a lack of ability to be objective. It's primarily an epistemological problem and a moral problem, because the epistemological problem is not like a problem. The epistemological problem is self-induced. It's self-caused. It's caused by the fact that they do not engage their minds. They do not engage with the world, with reality. That's a moral issue. So these are bad people who refuse to think, who refuse to be independent, who refuse to go by fact, and who are, as a consequence, immoral, bad people, some of whom completely go bonkers not in the sense of mental illness, but in the sense of passionate commitment to their beliefs, and are willing to go and kill people in the name of, just kill people, not in a war, but kill people in a supermarket. Because of their emotionalistic drivel. They care nothing for individuals. They care only for collectives, for groups, for tribes. And they're in the other tribe. Their skin color indicates they belong to another tribe. Therefore, it's okay to shoot them. It's okay to kill them. It's okay to murder them. So this is evasion on a massive scale, combined with a bad epistemology. Now, when you evade, you by necessity have a bad epistemology, because the essential for good epistemology is facts. The essential for good epistemology is look at reality. Be able to identify and separate out what you know and what you don't know. What is real and what is not. What is a good source of information and what is a bad source of information. What you can cross-verify and how you cross-verify and what you cannot. And that requires an active mind. What these people refuse to do is engage their minds, is have an active mind. That's the challenge. God, I don't think we're going to get very much covered today from the topics I intended, given how many Super Chat questions we're getting. All right, let's see. Have you read either War in the West? Is that it? What's his name? Douglas Murray's new book. I have not. I mean, Douglas Murray is another one of these problematic characters. I have a lot of respect for Douglas Murray. I have a lot of admiration for him for certain things that he's done. And in many respects, again, I have a lot of respect for him. But in his book about the death of the West, he buys into and accepts this replacement theory. And he talks in replacement theory terminology. And I think he's done enormous damage to the people who actually want to fight for Western civilization. Western civilization is not about skin color or genes. And so I haven't read War of the West, but I don't know. So I'm just curious if you align with their views well or not. I don't know if I align on the views of War in the West. My guess is I align with some of them and don't align with others. Knowing Douglas Murray, we disagree on certain important issues. Of what justice demands, I align with pretty much completely. So, which is the book on Israel. So I align with that completely. That's the one by Ilan Journo, highly recommended. It's about Israel. Let's see. That dude or bunny asked, Jordan Peterson often talks about how Jews genetically, on average, have high IQs, which doesn't seem far-fetched. It explains for their over-representation and envy, hatred towards them. Again, I don't like the IQ measure. I don't think it's a particularly useful measure. I don't think it's a particularly good way to capture intelligence and to capture success in life. There are lots of people who scored low in IQ and have done very, very well in life, very well financially. There's a low correlation between IQ and wealth creation, for example. So I don't like IQ, but there is such a thing as intelligence. How much of that intelligence is inborn and how much of that intelligence is a consequence of working on it is a good question, but and one that I don't think is being satisfactorily answered. But the fact is that intelligence matters. Jews are intelligent for a number of reasons. There's definitely a genetic component to it. There's certain habits of breeding. But there's also a cultural component that emphasizes learning and education and reading and studying, but most importantly, a cultural attitude towards argumentation. I'm okay with disagreeing with Charles Murray. It won't be the only thing I disagree with Charles Murray on. I disagree with Charles Murray on quite a few things. But Jews emphasize argumentation, which I think enhances intelligence, practical intelligence as you grow up. So I think there are many factors for why Jews are more intelligent on average, and why, put aside intelligent, Jews are just more successful on average. They do better career-wise. They tend to excel in whatever they do. They get more Nobel Prizes than anybody else. They are the people of the book, in a sense of not just the Bible, but of books, of reading, of writing, of debating, of discussing. So I've talked a lot about the IQ debate in the past. I think it's an awful debate. I disagree with Douglas Murray. I disagree with Jordan Peterson. Again, they are way, way, way too deterministic for my taste. Not for my taste, for reality, for the truth. Yeah. Again, Jews are super successful for a lot of reasons, for a variety of reasons. And yes, that explains why there's envy towards them, why they're hated, and so on. Colt Savage writes, 2 things that terrified me. One, I watched John Doyle today. It's scary how much he sounds like a left, while at the same time talking smack about the love that makes it even worse. He's not disintegrated. Yeah, I think that's what makes him and the right dangerous. John says, 2022, we still have to deal with racism and Hitler wannabes, truly depressing times. Yeah, I mean, think about Putin. Talk about a Hitler wannabe. And we have to deal with him. And him blaming others for being Nazis when he is the epitome of one. All right, let's see. Jeff writes, quote, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." I mean, the Statue of Liberty is a part of the replacement theory conspiracy. I just made that up, but it makes sense, right? Because nobody on the right today believes in giving your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. Even white tired, poor, and huddled masses, they don't want. They don't believe in that sentiment. They don't believe in the sentiment the Statue of Liberty represents. They would tear the Statue of Liberty down if they could, or at least wipe out those words from it. Because again, to them, it's not what America's about. America's not a land of immigrants. America's not a land of opportunity. America's not a land of individual rights. America's not a land of liberty. America's a land of white Christians. According to Tucker Carlson, what makes America great? 2 things: beautiful landscape and a belief in God. That's what they think America is. That's Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, who I think represents millions of people. Maybe it's a small percentage, but it's an important small percentage, and it's a violent small percentage, as we saw in El Paso, as we saw in Buffalo, as we saw in the synagogue in Pennsylvania, as we saw, no, this is New Zealand, in New Zealand. And we'll see more of it. There'll be more and more violence from the right, more and more violence from the left. It feeds off of each other. Somebody says the poem attached to the Statue of Liberty was added to it post hoc. Doesn't matter. It represented the sentiment of the people in that period of time. It represented the sentiment of Americans in the late 19th century when it was put on the Statue of Liberty. It wasn't just randomly put there. It represented a certain sentiment. And if you look at who came to America in the late 19th century, it was the huddled masses. It was exactly who the Statue of Liberty called for. And as an immigrant, I can tell you that the Statue of Liberty means a huge amount to any immigrant. I first came to America by boat and remember entering New York Harbor and seeing that Statue of Liberty and everything it represents. And everything it represents is the opposite of what these replacement theory white racists stand for. Ben Jackson says, Rand said man is born tabula rasa, man is born a blank slate. In other words, equal from the beginning in nature and in law. No, he's not equal in nature. So let's be clear on what Ayn Rand meant when she said a blank slate. She did not imply that we're all born equal in terms of our abilities. Mozart, I believe, was born with a capacity for music that I was not born with. A capacity. He still had to fulfill it. He still had to live up to it. Some people are born with a higher revved engine up there, a higher capacity for intelligence, for using their minds. They still have to use it. They still have to live up to it. But they have the capacity. We are not born equal. That's not what Ayn Rand meant. What she meant is we are born with no ideas. We're born without a determined nature that says that you're going to live up to your capacity. We're born with certain inclinations. We're born with certain capabilities. We're born with certain capacities. We're not born with ideas. That's what she meant by tabula rasa. That's what I think John Locke meant by it, what I think Aristotle meant by it. It's not that the brain structure is exactly the same and the links exactly the same. That I think that's just plainly not true. From the moment you can see two babies and they're not the same. But they don't have ideas. They're not born with any ideas. And that has to do with a theory of concept. Ideas can only come from an active mind that is actively engaged with reality to create, to identify, integrate these concepts. All right. Wow, number of questions. We're hitting records here. I guess these kind of issues always bring out questions. Okay, let's see. What else? Robert Nasser says, I'm old enough to remember the 80s. Me too, surprisingly. When racism was on the wane. I think it was. I really do think it was. Unfortunately, the left has brought it back as anti-racism, critical race theory, and the right, reactionary as ever, has taken the bait and made things worse. Absolutely. I agree completely. I agree completely. Now, racism on the right never actually went away, but it certainly was moving in the other direction in the 80s. Racism was disappearing from America in the 80s. Charlie says, despite the gruesome nature of the events, one cannot help but notice how differently the media portrays the shootings, depending on the perpetrator's race. Even if their racist motivations are bare to see, it's quite harrowing. Yes. And here he said he was a racist. You don't have to interpret it. And he scouted out this place. He wanted a place where a lot of black people were featured. He wanted a place where he was sure to be able to kill a lot of black people. He had clearly unequivocal racist motivations. And yet, many on the so-called right are going to deny that and reject that, even though it's self-evident, or just don't talk about it. Just don't make a big deal out of it. Oh, he's mentally ill. It's all an issue of mental illness. Or it's the left's fault. Critical race theory made him do it. John says, not that I care much either way, but since we're talking garbage theory, replacement theory, are these people able to at least define white objectively? Or is it just some subjective notion based on some tyrant whim? I mean, of course you can't define it objectively. And the more you dig into the genes, the more we're complete mixtures, right? I mean, most European languages, certainly, but most Europeans are heirs to, nomadic Asian tribes who came in from the steppes of Ukraine and Russia and out into Asia and dominated Europe. I mean, almost all the languages we know are Indo-European. Now, why Indo? Because some of that tribe went south to India. Does that make Indians of the same race as Europeans? They don't look the same. And Europeans don't treat them the same. So how far back do you go to define a race? And how many of us are mixed? I mean, how many times did, Genghis Khan and his heirs and Attila the Hun and his heirs raid Europe and leave their genetic mark on it. I mean, all of this is race is a pseudoscience. There is no race study. There's genes are real, and genetic history is real, and it's interesting. I find the history is interesting of how people moved and what caused them to move, and kind of what moved with them, kind of farming and herding and language. Wow. I mean, the whole phenomena of language is fascinating. I mean, these Indo-European languages that all starts in the steppes of Asia and then migrate into Europe and are responsible for Greek and Latin and all the Latin languages, but also responsible for German and all the Germanic languages. And then there are these exception language that are from tribes that are unrelated to these Indo-Europeans who came in. It's just interesting, kind of as part of history. I mean, there is no such thing as 100% European for thousands of years. I mean, what does that mean? So there is no objective. You can't have an objective theory of what is white. White is very much a random thing. Now, let me see. Somebody sent me a question. Okay, where we go. Okay, got it. Got your question from PayPal. You can make contributions on PayPal with a question. Just let me know so I know to go there to get them. All right, where were we? Did I copy that question? No, let me just copy that. Okay, where was I in terms of the question? Okay, here's another question. Ben asks, question on Rand saying man is born tabula rasa. Example, wasn't Rourke born with the character of a hero? One must decide who they are, but are still born with certain characteristics. No. I mean, Rand would definitely say Rourke was not born with the character of a hero. It would not. If he was born with the character of a hero, he wouldn't be a hero. If he was born with the character of a hero, he wouldn't be a hero. What makes him his hero is the choices that he made, not the accident of the genes he happened to get. Now, it might be that what makes him able to spatially see 3 dimensions and make him a good architect as a consequence. Some of us can see in 3 dimensions, can imagine what a 3-dimensional building will look like, can draw it, and some of us can't. So he maybe was born with that ability to see 3 dimensions, to draw and to imagine them. Maybe that capacity was there. But no, he was not born a hero. He was not born with a character. Character is something, and Ayn Rand was very, very, very clear on this. Character is something you make, you build, you create. You are a self-made soul. Your soul is made by you. Who you are is your responsibility, your fault, or your source of reason for pride. You are responsible for becoming a hero. So no, tabula rasa means that you're born without a character. That's the whole point. You're born without ideas, which means you're born without a character. Characters, ideas you choose, and the kind of life you choose to live, and the principles by which you choose to live. M808, thanks for the support. That doodle bunny, you can tell European features from non-European. Racial groups have their own facial structures and body types. For instance, Africans have much larger bottoms. Have you seen some Spaniards? And what about all the people who are mixed with Africans and whites and Latin and Arab and Asian? And the Italians, particularly from Sicily, let's say, have similar features as do Scandinavians in Norway. Really? Do all Africans have large bottoms? Ethiopians don't. Kenyans don't. It's what makes them great long-distance runners. They're super slim. It's just bizarre where you get these generalizations from. They're generalizations that are complete nonsense. Is every black person the size and frame of a LeBron James? Well, no, they're pygmies in Africa. Very, very short people. There are all kinds of things. Africa's not a monolithic, quote, race. It's not a monolithic anything. And you want to compare, Serbs, I think, are the tallest Europeans. I don't know who the shortest Europeans are. It's just, God, people, this is just ignorance. But it's ignorance, it's motivated ignorance. Motivated ignorance. Motivated by collectivism, by wanting them to be differences. So you find the differences. All right, it looks like we're going to talk about Ukraine and Democrats in misdirection tomorrow because you guys have flooded me with questions. All right. Okay. Hi, Yaron. The mindless intensity of your detractors in the chat tells me we are making progress. In social media, your reach is proportional to the negativity you attract from the broader online community. Keep it up. Yeah, but I've had negative chat comments since I've been on. I don't know that there's more negativity now than there was 5 years ago. Probably less. Some of them have left. Okay. Liam says, I've been monitoring the comment section on Yaron's videos and the super chat commentary over the last few years, and Yaron is building an army. How does it feel to be a general? I've always wanted to be a general. Like, not really, because I didn't really want to stay in the army. I thought the army was pretty boring, and I didn't like the whole hierarchy and the whole attitude and the mindlessness of so much of the army, even the Israeli army. There's just so much mindlessness in it. But on the other hand, I always wanted to be a general. I thought I'd be a good general. So yeah, I am super happy to have an army. And I'm super happy to hear what you just wrote, because I can only have one voice. But for every show I do, there are, a few thousand people who listen, 5,000, let's say. If 10% of those, 500, are willing to go out there and engage in comments and sharing and their own videos and their own things, wow, we've just taken my one voice and then turned it into 500. And then they influence a certain number of people who then influence other people. And that's how we grow. That's how we grow. So it's super exciting for me to think about it in terms of that kind of army and that kind of expansion and that kind of, and it's super exciting for me to know that many of you are doing exactly that. You're engaged in the battle. You're engaged in the battle of ideas. You're taking some of the material you're inspired by, you learn from this show, and you're going out there and using it, if you will, to promote and to enhance the culture in which we live. All right. Free Trade says, just a heads up for your information, Yaron. YouTube is rejecting some super chats. I can't figure out which words trigger it. That's weird. Okay. I'm wondering if anybody else has that problem. Let me know, whether it's because you're a foreigner, YouTube is particularly sensitive. I don't know. It'd be interesting to check around and see where else it's coming from. Yaron, Andrew asks, Yaron, do you worry about occultists on the rise in America, like T.L. Swan? Does mysticism bolster racism? Yes, absolutely, mysticism. Mysticism bolsters collectivism. Mysticism makes your mind impotent. And when your mind is impotent, you know that you can't know. You know that you can't know. Then what are you left with? How do you discover truth? How do you know what to do? How are you guided in your life? Well, you can't rely on your own mind. Mysticism doesn't provide you because you don't actually have a direct link to the occult. So you have to rely on the witch doctor, who is linked almost always to a tribe and an Attila-like leader of a tribe. And you become part of that tribe. Mysticism always leads to tribalism. In America, it's not an accident that you see tribalism on the right among particularly the evangelicals. The religion is nuts. And you see it on the left among the mystics of, I don't know, New Age occult nonsense. But the one thing they all share on the left and on the right is a complete rejection of reason. So yes, I very much worry about any signs of increase in any kind of mysticism. Mysticism and collectivism, mysticism and altruism, mysticism and anti-capitalism and anti-individualism always go hand in hand. All right. Let's see. Oh, Fred Harper says, I meant to mention this anyway. Do you know when you're going to have Alex Epstein on for his book release? I definitely don't want to miss that one. Yes, Alex will be on, whoops, let me open the calendar so I don't give you a wrong date. It's going to be next weekend. It'll be on, Alex Epstein will be on the show on Saturday, May 21, early because of his schedule, at 12 p.m. East Coast time. So 12 p.m. for those Europeans among you, easy for you to attend. But 12 p.m. East Coast time, I'll have Alex Epstein on the show. We'll talk for about an hour and a half on the release of his new book. So I'm excited to have Alex back on the show. And excited to get back to interviews. I want to do more of those. That'll be May 21 at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Frank says, the anti-government extremist Randy Weaver recently died. Was he right in defying the government Ruby Ridge, or was it about freedom and liberty? I mean, the question is, how do you defy the government? And defying the government by use of force, unless you're willing to call for a revolution, is wrong. You can't get away with it. And he didn't. People died. And that's what the court system is for, and the courts are flawed, and you're not going to get justice. But the alternative is revolution, but then you have to be serious about a revolution. So I don't know enough about the details of Ruby Ridge, but certainly a lot of the grievances of ranchers, a lot of the grievances of people around government confiscating their land, around the use of public land. There shouldn't be any public land for grazing, are real grievances, are justified grievances, are property right grievances. And they should be dealt with. The question is if the way to deal with them is by use of force. And my answer to that is not until we're willing to actually launch a revolution. Do you think movies like Blazing Saddles was a racist movie, a movie that displayed silliness of racism? I think it was primarily the silliness of racism and the silliness of anti-Semitism. I don't particularly like Blazing Saddles because I think it's over the top. And I think that it's making fun of a genre that I think was one of the most important and value-laden genres in American cinema in history, and that is the Western. The Western was the quintessential American movie genre. It was good guys and bad guys, and it was about heroes, and I think Blazing Saddles sets out to ridicule and make fun of all that, and I think that's why it's not one of my favorite movies. And generally what Mel Brooks does is he tries to do that to every genre, but the Western's a particular fond genre for me. I find it particularly offensive that he did that to Westerns. Adam. Adam Cabell says North versus South Korea is pretty good case study on cultural and economic differences that have nothing to do with race. Absolutely. And I mean, you can find it all over the world. You can find it in Germany, East and West Germany, right? And that's a good example because, there's a huge cultural difference between North and South Korea. And the primary difference is that South Korea has adopted Western culture. They won't admit it, but that's what they've adopted. They've adopted, in almost every aspect, they've adopted Western culture. They've adopted markets, not free markets, unfortunately, but markets. They've adopted democracy. They've adopted some respect for property rights, contract law. They've adopted, equality before the law. They've adopted Western ideas of the Enlightenment. And the beauty of that is that the ideas of Enlightenment don't see race. They're universal. If they're adopted in Africa, you get good results. If they're adopted in Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, relatively speaking, you get good results. Koreans embraced engineering and science, part of Western culture. So, it's not about race. It's about ideas. And the good ideas are the Enlightenment ideas, and the bad ideas are pretty much everything else. And it's no accident that the new right in America today, the nationalist right, the what they call themselves, the new right, their biggest enemy is the Enlightenment. The thing they want to reject the most is the Enlightenment. Reason is man's guide. That they want to reject. That they hate. That is unacceptable. All right. Is Judaism closer to Aristotle or Christianity is closer to Plato? Yes, for the most part. I mean, Christianity was founded by Neoplatonists, by people who studied Plato, took Plato's ideas seriously and embedded it into the ideology of Christianity. I mean, Augustine was a Neoplatonist, but so were so many of the Christian scholars in the early days of Christianity. So Christianity is explicitly Neoplatonist. Judaism was more this worldly, and in that sense more Aristotelian, and then it became even more explicitly Aristotelian with Maimonides, who tried to integrate Judaism with Aristotle's philosophy and became one of, if not the most influential rabbi in Jewish history. So modern Judaism is very much influenced by Aristotle because of the work of Maimonides. Shazbat says, I've had super chats rejected because I exceeded the $500 daily limit. I don't know if there are content restrictions. Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know you had a $500 daily limit. But that's impressive, Shazbat, that you've exceeded it. Good for you. I do have your movie reviews ready, so we will do them either Tuesday or Thursday this week. I will talk about the Star Trek and the Kiki's delivery service. Andrew Trigg asks, is there a connection between anti-abortion and anti-immigration that makes them the issues that animate conservatives the most? I mean, there is a connection, but I don't know that I mean, the connection is a rejection of rights, a complete rejection of the concept of individual rights. They don't recognize the rights of immigrants or the rights of people who are striving to be immigrants. And they don't recognize the rights of a mother. They don't recognize the rights of an adult. But why they're the ones that animate the right the most, conservatives the most, I don't know. That one, I'll have to think about it. I'm not sure what the connection is. I'm sure there is one. It makes sense that there would be one, but I don't know what it is. All right, let's go back and seek out the $20 questions. And as I said, I will, the topics that I meant to talk about later today will move to tomorrow, and we'll add Shazbot's movie reviews to tomorrow's show, and that should make a good show. We got a lot of $5 questions today. We made our $600 goal, so thank you guys. I really appreciate it. We made it with nobody giving $100. So we made it primarily from just the volume of questions. So that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. We can save the whales, the big dollar amounts for future times when we have fewer questions. Okay, let's start with the $20 plus questions. Nathan asks, can you explain why Elon Musk's Twitter purchase is on hold and why he's concerned by the number of bot accounts? Well, there's a number of reasons he's concerned about the bot accounts, but they primarily boil down to the ability of Twitter to become profitable. Bot accounts basically, so when Twitter says we have, I don't know, 100 million users, 200 million users or whatever, well, does that include the bots? Well, bots don't buy anything, so I can't advertise to them. Bots are not going to buy advertising, so they're not going to engage with economic activity. So I have to deduct the bots from the total number and then use whatever number's left to project revenues into the future. And if the number of bots is only 5%, then that gives me one projection of revenue in the future. But the bots, it turns out, are 20%. Then that gives me a completely different projection into the future. So the reason it matters is for financial projections. And one of the things that you have to understand that supposedly Elon Musk's committed to, and if he's not committed to, certainly his partners who have helped him raise the money are committed to, and that is turning Twitter into a profitable company and making money off of their investment. So this is not philanthropy. This is not a public service. This is a business deal. And therefore it matters, if you will, how many customers, how many users Twitter has that are legit, that are monetizable. Bots are not monetizable. That's the essence of it. Josh asks, great games there against the Bucks and good luck against the Heat. Started Pachinko recently, made me appreciate how Germany has handled the Holocaust versus how Japan has denied their wrongdoings. Yeah, I mean, Japan has really denied their wrongdoings, both with regard to what they did in Korea, but also what they did in China. I mean, Mr. Sunshine really does a good job of detailing some of the horrors of what the Japanese did to the Koreans in the early part of the 20th century. But yes, Japan unfortunately completely denied that. They took responsibility for generally World War II and what they did, but they didn't take responsibility for the atrocities they committed in their region. And they're still resented for it by the Chinese and by the Koreans. Let's see. Dean asks, he had a $20 question. Let's find it. Hey, Yaron, I've heard Leonard Peikoff saying that feelings should be your reward for your actions or values. As someone that struggles with OCD and anxiety, sometimes my feelings are disconnected from my actions and values. Sometimes there's no reward. I find myself feeling things, but I try to act on my values and objective judgments. Did you happen to think about what Leonard talks about? Maybe I didn't get it right. No, you got it absolutely right. Feelings are the reward, not the motivation. Well, sometimes they're the motivation, but they're not the reason for pursuing the values. They're not why you should pursue values, or certainly they're not guides to action. Feelings are the reward for successful actions, the reward for the achievement of values. If you are philosophically and emotionally healthy, if you're psychologically healthy, and the challenge for most people is that they're not. Primarily because of the way we're brought up, primarily because of the bad ideas we've integrated into our mind, into our soul, that prevents us from from feeling the right emotion at any particular time. For example, if you've internalized the fact that human beings are worthless, you're born of original sin. Now, I know you're not Christian, but Jews have internalized this pretty well too. Then when you do something good and when you achieve a value, a rational value, your background ideas are saying to your emotional system, he doesn't deserve it. He's still a scumbag. So he did something right once. Big deal. Don't feel the good, the happy, the positive feeling that comes from achieving your values. And what that requires of you is real intellectual and psychological work to integrate your values, to reject bad premises that still lurk in the background, and to bring to the forefront the bad ideas, the bad premises, the bad assumptions that are in your psychology, and then to annihilate them, to get rid of them.
Which one?
Oh, be quiet, Siri. Only then will your emotions respond correctly, if you will, or appropriately to the achievement of values and the achievement of success. Only then can you be happy, because happiness comes from that emotional sum of achieving. If you just achieve your values and you don't feel anything, you're not going to be happy. It comes from that emotional sum that is the reward of achieving your values. But for that, you need real work, intellectual, integrating the philosophy, and psychological, and see a good therapist who can help you bring forward the bad premises that you have so that then you can intellectually demolish them and put them to the side. All right, more $20 questions. Oh, there were a bunch of them. Let's see. Michael asks, if two objectivists don't like each other, does that mean one is not a real objectivist? No. It doesn't mean that. People can be committed to this philosophy and not like each other, not have the same values at some level, or just have characters that clash, that don't appeal to one another. It's absolutely not. It's not like all objectivists need to have a kumbaya, particularly given that it's a new philosophy. We're still integrating it. People are going to live it in various degrees and in various ways, in various levels of consistency. But I don't know what a real objectivist means. I don't know who a real objectivist is. I don't rate people. Real objectivist, not real objectivist. Real objectivist, it's silly. You rate people based on, he's a rational person. He's committed to morality, or he's a good guy, or whatever. But I don't rate my people based on how objectivist I think they are. Michael asked, is the reason Western countries haven't collapsed into socialism, fascism, because there aren't enough losers in our society? There are enough people with comfortable enough lives where envy doesn't subsume their thinking. But, I mean, it's obvious, it's often the people who are comfortable in life, live on the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side of New York, who are the most socialist of all. And it's often the people who are not comfortable, who don't want socialism. This is Marxist economic determinism. No, the reason we haven't become socialist and fascist is because we still cling to those values of reason, to those values of the Enlightenment. Not because of some economic deterministic, there are not enough poor people, not enough suffering people. Capitalist Nick asks, Chomsky has come out supporting Putin. Ooh, I'm shocked. In recent interview with British socialist Owen Jones. How does he justify his view of anti-Western imperialism and evading Putin's thuggery? Is anarchy and nihilism his rationale? No, his rationale is the West is evil. The West is imperialist. The West is threatening to Putin, and Putin is acting in self-defense. So Chomsky is anti-West, and if you're anti-West, you're going to be pro-Putin. I know a lot of people on the right who are pro-Putin because he's a strong man, because he's tough, and because the West is corrupt by leftist ideas. In Chomsky's view, the West is corrupt by corporatism. The West is corrupt by capitalism, capitalism primarily. And it's imperialistic, and Putin is just defending himself. So now I think what motivates him is his fundamental nihilism, his hatred of the good for being the good, his hatred of America. But that's not how he justifies it. Capitalist Nick says, any thoughts on 37-year-old British socialist standard bearer Owen Jones? He has praised Chavez and his handling of the Venezuelan economy and criticized characterizations of Venezuela as a dictatorship. Any thoughts? Yeah, he's a dishonest, evasive socialist. Do I need those typically go together, right? I mean, he doesn't care about human life. He doesn't care about progress. He doesn't care about success. He doesn't care about human happiness. He relishes the misery that a person like Chavez and Maduro have created in Venezuela. And he evades everything else. And again, Chomsky is the same way, exactly the same way. So he's a good student of Chomsky's. Capitalist Nick says, food protectionism is on the rise. India has recently cut off wheat exports. Indonesia and Argentina also engaged in protectionism. Argentina has been protecting its food supplies for a long time. Trend appears to destabilize food supply chains around the world. Any thoughts? Yeah, free trade works. Food protectionism is barbaric. It's primitive. It's made no country safe. And it's made no country rich. Argentina has engaged in this for 10 years. Still poor. Still not growing the economy. Still pathetic. So, no, it's a disastrous policy, as all protectionism is. I'll talk tomorrow or on another show about the disaster of baby food in the United States, which is a pure consequence of this protectionist nonsense, U.S. inspired. But no, I mean, what you want is a free flow of food. And look, people don't export more than they first consume. They first take care of themselves and then they export their excess. So by keeping extra wheat in India, I guess they're assuming they won't be able to import whatever. And they're afraid that Indians in India are going to be tempted to sell their last piece of wheat to the highest bidder and starve. It's just an assumption that people are irrational, that companies don't know what they're doing, that individual farmers don't know what they're doing. Everybody's going to be tempted by greed for money and going to commit suicide as a consequence, and the government rides in to save us all. All right. Michael asks, you say liars, cheaters, and thieves live miserable, pathetic lives. Would you say the same about mentally handicapped, schizophrenic, and disabled people in general? Well, some of them, certainly. I mean, I don't think schizophrenics can avoid living a miserable, pathetic life. Handicapped people can rise above their handicap and don't have to live miserable lives. They can live fulfilling lives. I think that's even true of mentally handicapped people. You can see people with Down syndrome and others that do the best that they can with the abilities that they have, and they live okay lives. They don't live fully, they live up to the full potential as human beings because they're handicapped. So, again, disabled people, it depends on the disability. If the disability is affecting your capacity to reason, even at the very basic level, then it's going to affect your ability to live a good life. If the handicap is something that you can overcome, I don't know, not having legs or something like that, which I think you can overcome, or even being blind or deaf, there are ways to overcome it, and you can still live a fulfilling life. So it depends on the kind of disability and how debilitating it is. Michael asks, has the Enlightenment defanged Marxism, the left, the way it has Christianity? Well, has it defanged either of them? Christianity is still alive and well, as so is the left. I think the Enlightenment through Ayn Rand, can defang both the Marxist, the left generally, and Christianity. But for that, you need Rand. The Enlightenment itself did not do it and cannot do it. It's too flawed. Its thinkers were too flawed. Why do Brits embrace you and Alex Epstein on commentary about world events and climate issues, yet American media are largely indifferent? Is the intellectual level debate in Britain more serious? Any thoughts? I think the intellectual debate in Britain is less tribal. So, for example, Fox News won't have me on. I don't know about Alex. I think Tucker's had him on once or twice because I'm anti-Trump. I'm anti the leader of the tribe. Britain doesn't care. I criticize Johnson. I criticize the left. They're much more intellectual. They're much more interested in the ideas. The right in England, I think, is healthier than the right in America, although it's also deteriorating and prone to the same kind of conspiracy theories and tribalism. But the right in America has become, particularly the right that dominates the media, like Fox and the other right-wing television programs, are completely tribal, completely tribal. I think the Wall Street Journal is probably better and the people there are better, but when you go to Fox, when you go to the other TV stations on the right, they're all about, right now, Trump or the latest conspiracy theory. Brits are generally more intellectual, and Brits are more interested in ideas, not interested in who you're supporting politically tomorrow. Maybe it's partially part of the political system is different. Ali asks, do you recommend a course or book to build self-identity? I'm going out of relations with a narcissistic person. There's an excellent essay by Ankar Ghate on the self-made soul, but it's in a book of essays, a thick book of essays, edited by Greg Salamieri, called, its readings on Objectivism on Ayn Rand. I have it here somewhere. But I don't know of a book that could help you. I think maybe Don Watkins is working on a book like that, but I don't know of a book like that. Shazbad writes, fun fact, Kiki's delivery service takes place in an alternate Europe in which World War I and World War II never happened. There are also witches. It's kind of funny that it takes place in Europe when it's a clearly Japanese animation. Why isn't it set in Japan? And it's not clear what the features are. It's interesting. Anyway, a companion to Ayn Rand. It's a companion to Ayn Rand, edited by Greg Salmieri and Alan Godhealth. And Ankar Ghate has an essay there about creating, building a self-made soul. Ayn Rand's view of a self-made soul. And it's excellent. So I think that would be a good primer for that. All right, here are the $5 and $10 questions. We'll go through these quickly because we're already at an hour, 40 minutes. Elon Musk said that Twitter banning Trump was morally wrong. Would you say that you and Elon have a moral difference of opinion? Yeah. I'm sure me and Elon Musk have a moral difference of opinion about a lot of things. I mean, he's wrong about a lot of things. Look, Elon Musk has blocked Alex on Twitter, Alex Epstein. I haven't. I'm actually inviting Alex on my show. I think that's a moral difference of opinion between me and Elon. I mean, it's interesting. Elon Musk thinks that Twitter banning Trump is morally wrong, but Elon Musk banning Alex Epstein is morally okay. Who's more rational, Epstein or Trump? I think that's clear. So Elon Musk is an admirable guy in certain respects and terrible in others. I disagree with him. Surprise, surprise. James says, the tax code shows slavery never ended, it just got cleaner. No, slavery ended. To compare taxes to slavery is to diminish the evil of slavery and to diminish the extent to which you are free in spite of the fact that you pay taxes. Taxes are awful. They're a massive violation of your rights, but you're still not a slave. Not in the same sense that people were slaves in the South in the 19th century. Liam asks, if the bad guys could win, they would have done it already. They have an history, so, never say never. But yeah, the fact that they keep losing, the fact that every time they try there's a backlash against them, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Michael says, unless we go full communist, will the rich stay rich no matter how corrupt and statist our mixed economy becomes? I don't know. There'll still be rich people. Will they stay rich? It depends how corrupt we are, how statist we are, whether they stay on the right side of the authorities or piss them off, whether we still allow entrepreneurship, that it allows for new people to become rich and for rich people to become poor. You need a lot more behind the question. You need a lot more context. Hop asks, is the reason India hasn't embraced capitalism as much as China because they are an extremely mystical people? Yeah, I also think that they're particularly Hinduism, Buddhism, maybe it's Buddhism, maybe both. They're particularly passive. They particularly reject the material world. Whatever transition Buddhism made when it came into China, that never caught on. Chinese people have always been ambitious, materially ambitious. I don't get the same sense of India. There's a certain passivity. Also, India has a caste system that China does not. There's very much a culture in China that of if you will, meritocracy. That is the idea of what we care about is merit. Chinese emperors had this. You rise up based on merit. Doesn't matter what your background is. In India, the caste system is really held them back. So I think it's a caste system. I think it's the passivity, and I think it's the mysticism. Yes, all of those. Michael Sanders, did you think COVID restrictions would ever go away, or they would become the new normal until they figured out a way to put us in gulags? I don't think they're putting us in gulags anytime soon. I mean, I've never said that. You know I've never said that. So I thought most of them would go away. I thought they would always keep the potential of coming after us and going after us. And they have that now. They have all these emergency laws and all these other things in place, and they're using COVID as an excuse to reduce our freedoms in a variety of different ways. But I don't think we're going into gulags anytime soon. Dean, hey, Yaron, is there a way for you to extend the character limit on Super Chat, even at $50, they're just 250 characters? Not in my control. Sorry, Dean. Michael asked, if technology advances to the point where we can choose our baby's gender, eye color, height, bone structure, are they, in a sense, property that can be manipulated? No, they're not property, but yeah, they can be manipulated in advance. They're not in existence yet. So they're only in existence once they become inexistent. So until then, why can't they be manipulated? It's not property. I mean, what you're manipulating is the genetic code in a particular sperm and a particular egg. It's not a human being yet. It's not even a potential human being yet. Somebody says AOC and Warren and Sanders will make it illegal to be rich. No, they won't. You guys don't understand. You don't understand politics. They won't make it illegal to be rich. They'll make it so to be rich, you have to have their permission. They'll make it so that their cronies are rich and nobody else. It's never been about getting rid of all rich people. None of them want that. None of them would do that. I mean, Bernie has 3 homes. And AOC, since she's become a congresswoman, dresses in very expensive clothes. Harper Campbell, I used to be a people's person, then people ruined it. People will do that. Yaron, that Doodle Bunny says, Yaron, have you considered making an OnlyFans page? I thought OnlyFans pages were like for hot women to basically, use for pornographical reasons. I guess I don't see it. How I would use an OnlyFans fans page. Are you a fan of very spicy food? Yes, I am. I became a fan. I genetically not inclined, culturally not inclined, learned the skill of eating spicy food from my wife's family. My family, there was no spice in the food. Colt says, the first one. Okay, the second, he had a first before. 2, you're going to dunk on me for this, but yesterday in Sunday school, they were talking about how important it is we should be environmentally conscious and promoting environmentalism, I'm afraid. I told you. Sunday school, I'm sure in an evangelical church. Christianity and environmentalism, hand in hand, going to change America. I told you, Colt. I'm not dunking on you. I'm just saying I told you. People don't believe me. Richard is claiming I'm a irrational, emotionalist moron, I guess, because I can't think. He says I can't think, which means I'm a moron. He still is here listening to me, which says a lot about him. But I get stuff right, amazingly so. Robert Naser says, thanks for the shout out at ARC UK's 500th TDO. And yes, you've got the pronunciation right. Thank you, Robert. All right, Bob Mojos asks an important question. I think this is a really good question. Did 4channel and Discord openness lead to the Buffalo shooting? No. The Buffalo shooting is a consequence of somebody adopting these ideas. Nobody can force you to adopt the ideas that you adopt. Nobody can force you to go on 4channel. Nobody can force you to accept the ideas presented at 4channel. Nobody can force you to then take a gun and go shoot people. But Mike, I'm not that concerned about 4channel and Discord or whatever, because they're relatively marginal with relatively small audiences. I'm much more concerned about the normalization of these ideas by people like Tucker Carlson, because that feeds these ideas to a greater and greater number, and it legitimizes them. So I'm for having open channels and having people talk about whatever the hell they want to talk about. They're going to one way or the other. But I'd like them to be marginalized. I'd like the attitude towards them to be, ooh, those creeps on 4channel think that. But when the same ideas are then on Fox and in other places, then they become unmarginalized. They become part of the world, part of life, accessible. I can be a normal person and hold these ideas. Tucker Carlson does. So I'm much more worried about the normalization than the marginal. The marginal can be marginalized. You can't marginalize Tucker Carlson. Right. All right, so it's not an issue of, and it's not even an issue at the end of the day. It's not even an issue at the end of the day of it's not even an issue at the end of the day of the bad ideas. There's a sense in which I'm not worried about the bad ideas. What worries me is the lack of good ideas, the lack of pushback against the bad ideas. Bad ideas only win. Tucker Carlson and the Candace Owen and the new conservatives who become these horrible, horrible people that support horrible, horrible ideas can only do that, can only succeed at it because the good is silent. Because good ideas are not being presented, are not being spoken out loud. It's because the good guys have either given up, in hiding, scared, silent. What scares me about the world today are not the bad guys. Bad guys are impotent. You can see that with Putin. Putin doesn't scare me. He shouldn't scare anybody. What scares me about the world today is the lack of good guys. How many good guys are out there? And yeah, you've got the Ukrainians fighting the bad guys when it comes to viscerally life or death. But on the battle of ideas, there is nobody. It's a desert out there. And that's scary. And that's worrisome. And that's what we are trying to do here, is change that. All right. Scott says there are a lot of imperfect good guys on the right. There are a lot of imperfect good guys on the right, and there are a lot of bad guys on the right. And Scott, when you're willing to recognize that there are a lot of bad guys on the right, then you'll be objective. But defending the right at all costs is non-objective. All right. No, you can't just do it with one good guy. You need an army of good guys. An army of good guys. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for the super chat. We did over $700 today. That's great. Almost $750. So that is fantastic. Keep it up, guys. Lots of questions. So tomorrow I will pick up on the other topics that we left up. Plus we'll do the movie reviews. Plus, God, I wanted to do baby food as well tomorrow. But, you know, there's also a show on Thursday. So there's plenty of time. We also need to do Yaron's Rules for Life soon, and some other positive shows. It's sad to just do all negatives. We will get to that. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you tomorrow, 8 p.m., right here. Hopefully nothing happens, and we will come here. Bye, everybody. See you then.